Well, thanks for having me. My name is Amanda Harris, and I'm from Maryland, but I've been playing and working in the field of regenerative agriculture for the last 15 years. That's given me the opportunity to work around the world. For the last 5 years, I've been down at Playa Viva, which is a regenerative boutique hotel in the southwest of Mexico, just south of Zihuatanejo. So we have 5 core values that focus on regenerative energy, water, waste streams, and really creating transformational experiences. So for me, a regenerative or a sustainable vision for the food sector around the world is to work in those same patterns. I think it's as much the responsibility as the chefs and the farmers and the students of agriculture to start thinking and being creative as it is for individuals, consumers, and still the same farmers and chefs to get involved in some of the politics. Really work in the conversation of bringing nutrient-dense food into hospitals, into school systems, where we are really starting to feed based on nutrition rather than calories to some of our most vulnerable communities. That doesn't happen without getting involved, kind of stepping into Washington, D.C. or in local politics in our communities, in our counties. It can start as small as a school board meeting. And so my invitation would be for farmers and chefs to really step out of our comfort zones, which is often the land or the kitchen, and start connecting to bigger communities and see how we as a society can start to shift the way not only food's grown, but the way it's consumed and how it's treated once it leaves the field. I think when we're farming, when we're working in the fields, we often kind of look for the best soils, or we get intimidated by the forest because we're used to growing sun-loving plants. But what we do at Playa Viva is work on identifying these marginal spaces where we can grow native or indigenous plants. Another practice that's incredibly popular inside the field right now is the concept of planting water, or sembrando agua. And for us, that means introducing the species back to the landscape that bring water to the system instead of being so demanding on water. Where I live, water's the conversation around everything. There's either far too much of it or months where we don't have it at all. And so a lot of the work we're doing is using wood as mulch, creating sponges inside the field so that during hurricane season, during rainy seasons, those organic materials absorb water and then slowly release it back into the system at some of our toughest and most difficult times of year. The diversity of the stakeholders that come to the table is also a leading guiding principle in how we work. So from the ecological perspective, we're reintroducing crops that have disappeared over the last generation. We're pruning and coppicing trees and bringing them down and leaving them through flower cycles in times of year when we don't need those spaces, allowing and recognizing the importance of pollinators inside of our system, especially where forests are disappearing. There's this scarcity factor, and it creates fear, and it creates nervousness inside communities that I think prohibits people from taking risk. And so at Playa Viva, what we do is really focus on the abundance. Look at what is there and how can we use those elements inside of a system to create more diversity, create more edges, create more marginal spaces that allow us to work with inside microclimates and bring different microbiology back to life in the space. And so for new folks interested, or if you're overwhelmed by what you hear in permaculture or agroforestry and regenerative agriculture, the first principle is observe and interact. So I invite young folks or older folks getting into the field to really go out and see what's happening and identify, and as you go into a new community, kind of identify the needs of that space and start thinking about how you can be a positive player or start to fill some of those gaps inside community development, land management, or social and educational systems.